Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm. For wills, trusts, probate, and business law, call 469-515-2559. That's 469-515-2559. Or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fans. Welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. This is number 274, and look who's here. It's your favorite English man, Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
How's it going?
Very good, sir. Thank you very much. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, and the original soccer influencer himself, Buzz Carrick. And he's back in town in person with a good internet connection to boot. Come in, Buzz.
Yeah, I got to say, fellas, this feels super weird. Being back at a desk.
It's weird being able to hear you.
Yes.
I know.
Where you don't sound like a robot.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
That felt better.
Yeah.
Very good. Unfortunately, we had to take last week off because of Buzz's aforementioned bad internet connection, but that was probably, in retrospect, a good thing because, unfortunately, since the last time we talked, the Burn have fallen out of the Leagues Cup in the most spectacular of ways, first losing at St. Louis 2-1, and then losing at home to FC Juarez 2-0, getting shut out to Juarez. And boy, there's a whole list of weirdo stats to talk about that. But Buzz?
Yes, sir.
My observation, especially as that Juarez game was going down, and I never like to be one to intimate that maybe players have ulterior motives going on, but man, you just had to wonder, with all the injuries and the number of games that team had played over the course of a very short period of time, if just somewhere in the back of their mind, a 3-week vacation wasn't looking kind of as a, well, that's not a bad kind of turnout if we don't win one of these games in advance in the tournament.
Yeah, I think, as soon as they realized that game was going to be hard, I think that this is probably possible. You almost couldn't help it. But the problem is that Peter Luxane needed these games. He needed, I think, good performances here, and he didn't get it. He got, a decent showing versus St. Louis, but not a good showing considering that they're not very good. And he got a horrific showing against Juarez, one of the worst of the season for this team. And a lot of that was some really poor, to me, tactical choices he made. The first time I felt like, what WTF is he doing? And it came at a really bad time. I mean, before this, we were having conversations on here about, he's doing all the right things to win this job. All you do is keep going and keep this level of performance going. And then team right into the wall, crap the bed, whatever analogy you want to say. You're probably right that maybe you can't help but think, you know what, a rest would be good, do some team some good. I mean, we watched those games with just an absolutely decimated lineup, and he's being forced to start guys that shouldn't be starting. And he's trying to piece it together the best he can, but he just ran out of steam. And unfortunately, Peter Luxane ran out of steam probably at a really, really bad time, because now his owner is going to stew for a month on those horrible results before they play again. And that's not how you win jobs, leaving your owners stewing and angry for a month, even if you're resting. So this was not good.
Well, but Dan, isn't it maybe that not a bad thing ultimately? If we all are in agreement that the number one thing we want to have happen is force the Hunt's hand at hiring the right person for this job. If we find out that Peter Luxane cannot, get these guys to perform against Juarez, maybe that's something we need to know, isn't it?
I think as much as anything, it's you don't want to. I think when they had that early success, my initial thought after games was, they're getting close to the playoff line. Something you didn't see a remote possibility. But if they achieved that and then Dan Hunt's like, yeah, we did it. We're in the playoffs. That basically makes us MLS Cup winners. Well, then there's no urgency to not only look at is the coach the right coach, but are the players an actual true playoff challenging roster?
Right.
It'd be such an easy cop out. I think 2 games ultimately isn't going to dictate is Peter Luxan the best choice as coach, particularly not in such a weird setting as those early League Cup games. But yeah, I mean, I think take the positives out of it, right? They get a couple of weeks rest to work on stuff. They actually get time to work with him, because I think I totted up the dates last week, and he's had exactly 1 full week to work with the team on tactical things, not just recover, game, practice, game, recover, travel, game.
But Buzz, isn't the fact, everybody kept talking about how there were all these games jam-packed into a very short period of time, and I kept thinking in the back of my head, I feel like people shouldn't use that as an excuse or let them off the hook for that, because it's not like they didn't know what the schedule was back in February. And really where they're at this point is just a byproduct of exactly the thing that we've been talking about even before the season, which is, are you sure this roster is the one you want to run with? Because there's a lot of really questionable there's a lot of questions here, of course, as we've talked and beaten that dead horse multiple times, which is, a lot of injury-prone guys that have all turned out to be injured and not available.
Yeah, look, every team has this same schedule in a rough sense. You have to play a lot of midweek games. That's the price of playing things like a Leagues Cup, and yes, that is the major problem. There's multiple issues with this roster. One is the too many guys that are hurt too much. Some are sort of a disconnect in terms of like the kind of roster they were building versus what the coach thought they were building. And some of it is the overuse of old players versus the pipeline and that kind of thing. But you have to, I think at this point, you can't be thinking about, what's next and what might be on a roster overhaul. You have to be thinking about this coach compared to the last coach, compared to a hypothetical coach. Is this the guy that can get the most out of this roster? And for a great deal of the time, we have seen him get a lot out of this roster. But granted, a lot of those games were at home. And that's this team in particular is very, very poor on the road and a lot better at home. So it's really hard to say, whether you feel like right now, whether you feel that this is the guy or not, or whether there might be something better out there. You can't even begin to start talking about like how you're going to change the roster until you figure out who it's going to be, which is a real shame about being in this window without having your coach decided. There's probably, if we compare particularly teams from south of here, whether it be Mexico or whether it be from South America, they really have this ingrained system where the technical director or the director of soccer, or whatever it's going to be at any given club, builds all these rosters, and then they go out and get a coach to coach that team up. And if you're not performing within a season, or sometimes even less than a season, half a season or whatever, you're out the door. It's like, I got a good roster. You're going to coach this team up or you're going to be gone. And then they change coaches all the time. And I can't help but wonder if that's kind of not what is happening with FC Dallas right now, in the sense that Zanata and whoever else at the club believes like we've got a great roster and we're just going to keep changing coaches until we find one that can win with this, which is a very un-American and un-MLS way. We're used to having coaches have the majority of the power here, and be able to get rid of TDs or often or even be the TD themselves and for the most of the history of this league. So it's kind of a weird, I was going to say way, that's not quite right. It's kind of a weird, different version. Like even for example, at this club, Shellis kind of picked his own TD, right? And then he also had a lot of say in Clavillo coming in, and Clavillo and Oscar worked more hand in hand. Well, it doesn't really feel that way anymore, does it, around here? So we're kind of in a weird spot in terms of we almost have to limit ourselves with just discussion of, okay, is this the guy or not? and because the club's not making any moves that we can tell. And we know that they've tried, or at least they want to make a move in terms of center back, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So I honestly don't know. At this point, it's such in limbo that it's almost hard to really have a directed conversation about where they should go, what they should do, or how they should approach the back end of the season.
Well, it's weird because it feels like it was a million years ago that Dallas went into the Leagues Cup on an undefeated streak of 3 games. They had beat the Galaxy 2-0. They had beat Austin 3-1. They had gone on the road and gotten their first point against New England. Then they go to St. Louis. Again, they had not won a game on the road. St. Louis, say what you will, but he rolls out with a 4-4-2 and Carl Sante in the middle. And I guess my number one question, Buzz, is, and this may be me just forgetting or whatever, because I'm prone to doing that these days or not paying attention. Was Alara Mendy injured, or did they decide to give him a vacation, or what's going on there?
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly from the St. Louis game, he was 50% chance he could play coming into that game, and he just didn't make it, or they decided not to push it. And then for the FC Juarez game, if I remember correctly, he was cleared and was on the bench. I have it in front of me. Give me a second. I'm pretty sure he was on the bench, but they chose not to use him. No, he did not play. He did not make the bench. So obviously those estimates that he was going to be 50-50 to make it to the St. Louis game, and then the Juarez game obviously didn't come to fruition. But I will say that, like, there's been a lot of times this season in particular where they vastly underestimated how long a guy was going to be out, at least in terms of what they're telling the public and telling the media. So it's not surprising to me that they were like, 50-50, he'll be back for the St. Louis game. He's going to play against Juarez, and then that didn't happen. That's not surprising at all. That's the way it's been this year. On the other hand, like, I'm not at all upset that they didn't risk him because he is a bit old, and I don't know that putting him in that Juarez game would have made a whole lot of difference. Maybe it would have, because the team is vastly better when he's in there. But the decision might have been made by some point, like, look, we're going to have a chance to get everybody healthy after this gap. We might as well just wait on him too, and that's particularly unhelpful in terms of your chances to win, because you're basically rolling out and sebling Carl Sante central midfield, neither one of which should be starting. And Sante in particular, like, I've already told the story before, like, the entire discussion with the staff before they signed him was that, like, yeah, we really like him as a center back. He's going to be a center back. And then he's played holding mid the whole time he's been signed with FC Dallas. So, the idea that he's starting in these MLS or in Liga MX level games as a 6 when he wasn't even supposed to be a 6 is really just tells you how bad it is. And they're making emergency signings of my man, Anthony Ramirez, who I'm ecstatic to see get into games. But it's like, that just shows you how awful the load is in central midfield that those things are happening. So it is forgivable in a lot of ways. But what isn't forgivable is, as you mentioned, the 4-4-2 against St. Louis, is an adaptation we've seen. These flexing positions, at least they're using Junca as the higher midfielder and Farfan as the defender, which is better, but that game sort of lost a lot of the flex that the team had been using. It happened more up front with Paul getting up front and getting back, and they tried to give Ema a little bit more freedom, but that game didn't have what I have come to call the same flex in it. But the Juarez game did, in the most bizarre choice of which players flexed and who ended up at what position I've ever seen. That one was the one that was truly mystifying. But the paltry nation of the lineup and the bench with all the limitations from injuries it's just what can you do, honestly?
So I didn't the St. Louis game I have not seen, and I was looking at some notes from the game. I don't know, Dan or Buzz, what you guys think about FOTMob ratings, but I was surprised to see Carl Sante was the second highest rated player behind Paul Arriola in that game. Does that track with you, Buzz?
I think that he played fairly well, in the sense that, like, the minutes he's been playing, Sante, he's been playing a very simple game. He's not trying to over commit himself. He's not trying to play it too ambitious of a ball. He's keeping it simple and finding players around him, so I think that's probably fair. He didn't turn, he's been susceptible as a 6 to at North Texas mostly, to a little bit of a loose touch where the ball is bouncing away a little bit. And he kept that pretty clean, and occasionally trying to make too ambitious of passes and them getting cut out and getting turned over and causing attacks the other way. Those are his two biggest issues that I worried about, and why I didn't like him as a 6 coming up to MLS. I think his on-ball ability and his passing ability look much better at a center back, relatively speaking, which is why I think there's a potential there in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought he was okay against St. Louis. Against St. Louis, I thought the team put in a pretty decent on the road, grinded out sort of performance. They created 12 shots on the road, which is an okay percentage, but they didn't get him into good enough opportunities. They only got 3 of them on target. And that's where again and again and again, we've talked about it with this team. They can't afford these deep shots. You've got to get it into good positions. And that's where they failed in St. Louis. Their opportunities came late, but they did get some, and they did a pretty good job against St. Louis, a team that's relatively speaking about in the same positions that they are. So that was always going to be a difficult one, because it's a team with the same caliber. So it was a solid performance. Sante was okay. That game, I thought Luke Sain did a nice job of using the pieces he had to create that nice 4-4-2 look, which puts Musa and Farrington up high. It put a nice block of 8 across the middle and let them kind of go mid to low block. In the end of the day, they weren't able to get forward and get good enough opportunities for their guys up front. Those guys worked really hard and ran their butts off, the 2 up front. They just couldn't get enough of the game to them. And if you look at that midfield, which is Junca, who's really a defender or wing back probably, Sante, who's we just talked about, should be a center back, Seekin Zebling, who's a decent enough good midfielder, and Areola, who's a decent enough good midfielder. But so half of it is like not really guys that are going to be able to create and link, and that puts you at a disadvantage. And you can see, and like if you looked at that game, you can see where the difference would have made. And that one in particular. But then you get to the Juarez game and it really went sideways.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I want to know, because he changed the formation to a 3-5-2 essentially against Juarez, which makes me wonder, was that something that he thought he was doing to kind of react to how Juarez was going to play, or was it trying to fix something that he thought was broken in the St. Louis game?
Well, it must have been to try and contain Juarez, because he sat Nkosi Tafare, which I don't understand at all, for Omar Gonzalez. The only thing I can think of, and I buy this conversation if it's correct, is that Omar played in Mexico a whole bunch. And so if you're going to have a guy, if you're going to arrest a guy for a dude that has a ton of experience playing against these kinds of players in this kind of team and this kind of game, Omar, this is a good opportunity. The thing that went sideways for him was that he used Marco Farfan as the left center back when he had Nkosi. He could have brought in Omar and just sat Farfan and played Nkosi as left center back, because the weird part was that the outside back flex that Lucien has done over and over and over again in this particular game, almost always he uses Areola to do it. Areola flexes to right back, and then he flexes up into midfield or even wing, because Paul's a very intelligent player who's a two-way game and can get him down the whole field. But in this game, he didn't do that. Areola was in the game, but he didn't play that flex right back. Instead, they used Junca on the left as the flex left back, and Siki and Sebling was flexing from like the high 10 in front of Leggett and Carl Sante. Siki was moving from that spot to left midfield when they didn't have the ball. So he became the wide left midfielder, and Junca became the left back. And that meant Marco Farfan was the center back, and Sebastian Ibiaga was playing right back. And because Juarez had like 65% of the ball for like 80% of the game, that meant for the majority of the game, Sebastian Ibiaga was playing right back. And since he doesn't know how to play right back, Omar Gonzalez was cheating over to his side of the field. Omar's average position is way over to the right side of the field, and that left Marco Farfan on an island against their number 29, what's his name, Zaldivar, their best striker, who immediately lost him and scored the one goal, and they won the game. So how in the world do you end up with a 4-4-2 styled in defense with Junca as your left back, Marco Farfan as your center back, next to Omar Gonzalez, and then Sebastian Ibiaga's right back is beyond me. That's just an absolute meltdown of a flex. If you wanted a flex with that group, then you flex Areola back, and that way you keep Omar and Sebastian in the middle. And for God's sake, just if you really want a back three, just play Tafari and set Marco Farfan. I just don't understand this is the first time I was just absolutely baffled by what was going on. I couldn't believe it. And it led directly to the goal.
Yeah. I mean, I saw most of this game. I saw the entire first half, and then I was so frustrated and bored, frankly. I turned it off, and then I decided to watch the last few minutes of it. I think I watched like the last 15 minutes of the second half, and my observation was tied one tactically. All those things you just mentioned was Juarez was just running Dallas over. I was shocked to find out that Dallas actually had more possession than Juarez did.
That only happened at the end of the game because when they were chasing it.
But Dallas could not create any opportunities, and Juarez was just beating them to every ball. And it was just bad. I mean, again, this gets back to what I said originally, which was the team just didn't look like they had any real desire to get a result out of this game. And Juarez was having way too much ease doing what they wanted to do. And the part that really bothered me was going into this game, Juarez is a pretty crummy Liga MX side. They had not won a game all season. The last time they won a game was April of earlier this year, which is, the end of their previous season. They had allowed, I think I'm saying this correctly, Buzz, they had allowed 2 goals per game dating back to, I'm looking at it right now. The last time, dating back to last season, the game that they tied back in April. They had given up 2 goals every game since then. And generally are not a very good team. And I don't think had won on the road in a really long time. So to have all of that happen at home for Dallas, really, that's probably in the history of the club, one of the more embarrassing and awful losses. I think it has to go down that way, doesn't it?
Well, basically, Juarez easily handled them. They just controlled the game through Dallas made a whole bunch of subs at the 58th minute. So that's roughly 60. So through that mark, Juarez had more of the possession. I know that the numbers are only showing that they had, 52 to whatever, but it was much more through 60 minutes. It was much more lopsided than that. And Dallas basically was running out of ideas. Dallas ended up with a flurry of late shots. They ended up with 10 shots total and only 4 of them on goal. So same sort of thing. They really just watching that game. It's like they ran out of ideas. Their only idea was when they get the ball, they would try and attack quickly and directly to try and with Musa or Ferdinand try and catch Juarez out and get in on them. Mm-hmm. So that's every time they would get it, they immediately go and then they would lose it and Juarez gives the ball back and they just controlled the game. So Dallas spent the bulk of that game playing that back forward with Ibiaga right back. I mean, they just and it wasn't like watching that game that it was like, oh, this is a hard fought game. Juarez controlled that game easily. They were not stressed. Their main central midfielder was not even sweating. I was laughing my butt off watching him walk around, control the game without even get a sweat on. And it was 100 degrees.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't score the second goal until the 83rd minute. And there was at no point in the second half did I ever think Dallas had a chance to tie this game. And by the way, Buzz, they had 4 shots on goal. 3 of those were in the first half. They had 1 shot on goal the second half, Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't good.
So it's a bad loss. They're out of the tournament. And now they've got this time off. And part of me makes me wonder, well, I guess the question everybody's wondering, and we can just jump ahead to this part because that's all anybody at this point cares about is every day you watch anything on the social, you see another MLS club making moves, some of which are making some massive moves.
Yeah.
And center backs are getting added to rosters. It feels like every single day. And other than this, Uganda, is he from Uganda? I can't remember which country he's from, but the guy they got from the Israeli, is Show. They've got nothing going. By the way, when is that guy showing up? Has anybody heard when he's going to join the club?
Well, somebody has suggested it might be hard for him to get here since he's trying to come from Israel, given the current climate of things that are happening.
Maybe
over there.
So
but who knows? I mean, hopefully it's this window. Even the club was like the other day. They had a little thing about, now it's time to rest and get healthy, and hopefully the guy can show up and get involved. I was like, oh my God, they don't even know. I mean, he's probably stuck waiting for his visa, right? You got to get your visa, so he can't come until he gets that. So he's probably stuck in Israel, and he may have to go back to Angola, for all I know, to get it. That's not an easy Visa get, I bet. So stay tuned, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess the point I'm trying to make is nobody has any confidence that anything's going to come out of this window.
No.
And specifically them getting a quality center back.
I mean, I think they were efforting one and were trying to get one, and then something must have gone sideways, because there's no way that that they've been talking about this. Because listen, Nico Steffes brought it up like within like a couple of weeks at the beginning of the season, like we need a center back. So they've known since March that they needed a center back, and we know enough things behind the scenes to know that they were trying. So like if something has gone wrong, or whatever they thought they had, they didn't get, or something. And so because now they're running out of time and nothing's happened. So like, I don't want to be flat out say like, no, they just don't think they need one. No, I think they know they need one. I think they've messed it up somehow. Whose fault any of that is, as I have no idea.
I wonder if that's related at all to the job posting for a scouting intern that popped up on the interwebs today.
Yeah, I suppose it could be.
What was the language in that, Buzz? There was a very funny line that just didn't bode well for this point of the season. There was a line in the job description that said, I'm going to try to read it here. The scouting intern will play a critical role in our soccer scouting department. That's I don't know. That probably says a lot related to how we all feel about the progress on them adding to the roster at this point.
Maybe the critical role is sorting through all the emails they get from people wanting to play.
But here's the deal. Center backs are not 4-leaf clovers.
No.
How many center backs have been signed in this window and so far? 4, 5 across the league?
There's a bunch. Here's the thing. Like I can't tell you what went wrong. I just can't even fathom that they're so bad at this that they just didn't even think they needed one. That can't be true. They have to have, because the coach was talking about it.
Zanata talked about getting a center back at the Petter Luxen announcement.
Right. So until somebody and look, maybe because they're such a small, I think small department where it's Zanata and the new TD whose name I can't remember, and maybe like a scout or two. Like it's a really small department of people that are involved. I don't think Dan Hunt gets involved until, and this is just my impression, until late in any kind of process. So they're really good at keeping tight lid on stuff. So we don't get a lot of things here about what's going south when things don't happen. So until somebody like Bogart or some agent leaks like what happened, we're going to be at a loss. But something must have happened. There's no way that they're this incompetent.
Oh yes,
I just don't think.
Yes, there is.
I don't think that's. No, I don't think it's.
Do I need
to not get one at all? To not get one at all is like there's something. I can't believe something hasn't gone wrong. That like there must have been a failed hurdle or something, or somebody tricked them at the last minute and got more money, or these things happen too. So. Somebody said he's coming, and then in the last minute he's not.
I think obviously they know they need a center back. Their inability or failure to get a center back, I totally believe they're capable of being of ineptitude at that level. Yes,
man. I
mean, have you seen Eugene? Have you seen Eugene Ansa play?
I have. Yeah, he's about the same as the other guy.
Yes. Oh, and the other thing we talked I still haven't figured out if this is a silver lining or a kick in the balls. We got an Anis Solly sighting out of the Juarez game.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah.
Like, what's up with throwing that poor kid on for like 10 minutes at the end of the game? And by the way, did you see what happened in his very first touch of the ball?
Oh, I don't even remember what did he do. I don't remember.
He got trucked and tossed aside like a piece of tissue paper.
I told you he was tiny. People were like, I think even like Steve Davis was like, oh, he's not that tiny. Dude, he is tiny. He's like small as the size of Paul Arriola tiny.
Well, that's tiny. There was a smaller guy on Juarez, so that was playing in the midfield. But
yeah, the league MVP is smaller, but that doesn't mean that Song's not small.
Yeah, he's a tiny little dude, and he wasn't out there long enough to really get any sense as to what his qualities were. I just thought it was weird if that was the moment they chose to debut Anis Solly in a Dallas shirt.
Why not at that point? Just put him on. Yeah, that signing. I mean, Coach was right when that signing happened. Everyone was all hyped up, and he was like, "You guys all better tap the brakes on this." He wasn't lying. That the kid's 18. You have to think of him as like a homegrown, an 18-year-old kid. That's the best you're going to get out of him right now. It'll be 2 or 3 seasons before he's really valuable, probably.
Yeah, probably.
If at all. If at all. I mean, how many kid size have we seen? 18-year-old kids need 2 or 3 seasons before they actually pay off.
Dan, you've been awfully quiet. Do you have any hope at all that
in
Dallas
general,
will sign it? Oh, I'm sorry. Just about the world in general, or I was looking maybe just more specifically to the club.
It's difficult, right? I follow 2 teams, both are in desperate need of centre back, and both have decided, what the fuck is a centre back? No, it's awfully quiet. The whole Kafu Mana show thing, using up an international roster spot, that kind of seems, I don't know, it seems like that's not an important role to get over, some other positions that maybe you would want that international roster spot, because correct me if I'm wrong, Buzz, but that was the very last one they have.
Yeah, that was the 8th one. Yep.
Yeah,
and the last senior roster spot too.
Yes, that's not a good sign. That sounds like, oh, well, we didn't get our business done, but we can at least bring a body in.
It means if you do find a center back, and it almost certainly have to be an international center back, that you're going to have to make a move to make it happen, because like you can't add in a senior roster move. That means you got to get rid of one of your top 20 players, and you got to get rid of an international, basically, or acquire a spot somehow by the trade or whatever. It just means that you can't do it.
Especially if that second buyout's now not happening.
The second buyout is not happening. That's correct.
So then that whole backup plan of cut Paxton, get him back on a deal another day when he's fit. You can't do that now.
Yep. Well, Paxton, I would have done that because Paxton's already on IR. He's already off the roster.
Well, I just mean that was like one of the scenarios people were talking through was like, you can always do something. Something is now less available.
Yeah. There are ways to make it happen. It just means that you're going to have to expend some assets somehow. You're going to have to get a guy off the roster somehow, and you have to find a way to get a national.
Well, you got to you got to have a front office that is both creative and ambitious. I mean, there are multiple teams in the league that are doing both of those things at a very high level. And I mean,
LAFC is adding Giroud and Griezmann.
Well, I don't know if Griezmann's coming.
Insane.
Yes, there's been a lot of additions at a very high level across several teams. Not a lot of them. I mean, Dallas isn't the only team that's just sitting on their thumbs.
Yeah, certainly not. That's true.
To be fair, but it is frustrating. But there's part of me that just thinks that maybe they've just given up on the season because they know they've got to find a new manager. I mean, this is exactly the scenario that we predicted was going to happen as the season got worse and worse. And we knew that Nico Estevez was on a very short leash and likely to get canned. And they clearly had no plan for what to do when they got rid of him.
Well, to me, that's why the show signing feels kind of weird, because it feels like it's a signing where Luxem went to the front office and said, I'm getting destroyed in midfield. I need a player. This is awful. And they're like, great. Okay, here's a 6. Right. And that's like, and we're going to rent him for the rest of the season, because it's easy to get out of that contract 9 games from now when the season ends if you don't want him. So it's just a rent a player if you want. So it feels like it's a shut up and leave me alone. I'm trying to work on next season. Here's a guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's what it feels like.
Well,
so,
I mean, look, here's the reality. They've got 2 weeks plus before they have to go to DC and play up there and try to get points on the road. The rest of their schedule does not bode well for a playoff run. It just simply doesn't. It's more road games than home games. They've got some difficult games to play, even the ones at home. And I think this thing has been done and dusted for a while, although I think the front office and a few diehard fans have all held out hope that they would somehow make a magical playoff run. But that's all going to be tied to a couple of really key things. Alara Mendy getting back on the field and getting healthy, and the return, I'm assuming Jesus Ferreira is somewhere close to coming back. Does anybody have any idea what his status is?
Yeah, they've said he's close.
Okay.
I know, but listen, we've talked about that a bunch of times lately, is that like, you can't, they've been overestimating how fast guys are going to be back. And there's definitely circulating around the club this expectation that Jesus and Velasco are relatively close. And then after that is Delgado, possibly, Frazier should be back sometime soon. Those kinds of things are what the people are saying. So
my question, I guess my general question to both of you is, if everybody here in a very short order, not necessarily by DC, but maybe by the beginning of September, they've got Velasco back, they've got a healthy Ferreira, they've got a healthy Alaramendi, and Delgado, let's say. Is there enough Frazier, or even Frazier? Do they have enough pieces to make a playoff run?
Oh man, that is really, I want to hear what Dan thinks too, but that is really, really hard because they only have 4 home games left. And it's Colorado, who's pretty good, LAFC, who's really good, Orlando and Poppy, who's pretty good, and Sporting Kansas City, who will love nothing more than to ruin FC Dallas's season at the end of the season. That Sporting Kansas City hates Dallas. They'll be happy to ruin it for you. And you got to go on the road for 5 of those games.
DC, Vancouver, Salt Lake, San Jose, and Portland.
That's not easy. That's not an easy road slate. I mean, DC's not that good, but Dallas has 0 road wins in any comp. Oh, sorry. They have 1. They have 1 road win in Open Cup play against a USL championship team. That's their 1 road win. And they won like 18-17, if I remember correctly, I think was the scoreline of that game. So, at DC is not easy, even though they're not very good, right? Vancouver, where's Vancouver at? Vancouver is, oh, Jesus. Oh, they're in the Western Conference. They're 5th in the West. So that's a loss. At RSL, Christ, that's a loss. At San Jose, okay, they're terrible. So maybe you have a chance there. And then at Portland, who's a team also fighting for the bottom of those playoff spots. And the thing is, right, remember, it's not about they're 3 points behind Minnesota for the last playoff spot. That's not what, it's not 3 points. You can't go, oh, they just need 3 points. That's not what it is. You got to get to 42 to 44, somewhere in that window. So they need something like 14-ish points out of those 9 games, which is like, that's win every home game and then get another like half of a win somewhere. Right. So that's, man, that is not going to be easy, even with all those bodies left. It's going to come down to the absolute wire. And that's if they can win all their home games. You got to win all the rest of your home games pretty much. And then you got to try and get something on the road. Maybe you could probably try, since they got the 1 tie in New England, you could tie 2 road games and that'll get you a win, quote unquote, with 3 points. But man alive, that is a thin margin. And to expect a team that has played the whole season at a clip of roughly 500 to turn it up to like 700, man, it's theoretically possible, but it's very, very difficult, even with all those bodies coming back. Dan, are you with me on this?
I love your positivity.
I know.
Yeah,
that is me being positive.
It's hard not to be doom and gloom, but you kind of have to be realistic. Like, we talked about how far off the playoffs they were to begin with, and they clawed back very well, put in some great form. I think from the outset of the season, there was a lot of talk about people pinning their hopes on Alan Velasco coming back, Giovanni Jesus, who's just seeing the inside of a gym. It's just, it feels like Luton almost. Oh wow, it's happening. We're gonna stay up. Oh, we didn't. No, injuries started picking up. Your sudden good form teams figure out the little changes. They can plan for that. They can adapt. It kind of feels like, unless something drastically happens during this break, and let's say, Luxon hasn't had a lot of time to work with the team tactically to have those full weekly cycles. Unless something drastic happens, it's not going to be the success season. It's going to be this is the forced rebuild. This is the start of a brand new cycle.
Look at it this way. Portland is in 8th, and they're 6 points ahead of Dallas. Minnesota's in 9th, and they're 3 points ahead. And Austin is in 10th, and they're 1 point ahead. So you have to outplay 2 of those 3 teams
just to get into the knockout
just
game.
To get to the 9th spot.
The knockout game. That's not even playoffs technically, really.
And you got to outplay them by, Austin, you got to outplay by 2 points, but Minnesota or Portland, you got to outplay by 4 or 7 points over 9 games. And those are teams that are playing decent lately, right? You got to effectively you have to turn into like one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the West overnight in order to do this. It's not just we're 3 points out. There are 3 other teams in the way. Kansas City on 24 points is probably out of it because they're 6 points behind you. And you could bring in Houston on 37 or Seattle on 37. Well, that means you got to outplay those 2 teams by 8 if you want to get ahead of them in 8 points in 9 games. So it doesn't matter like this idea that like they're close and they've done some good things. It's like you got to play monster soccer to beat those teams, more than 2 of those teams, or just to beat 2 of those 3 teams to get in. Since you're at the bottom of those 4, you got to be the best one, and that's why it's virtually impossible. So it's like
we kind of saw it play out with Miami last year. They had a great run at the playoffs, but they were so far behind. There's only so much you can play catch up. You've got you've got to not only win your games, but you've got to hope that the teams around you drop points to kind of get that net gain.
I don't know which team this is. Is this the team that went undefeated leading up to the Leagues Cup and, beat LA, which is the first place team, beat Austin, which is ahead of them, in this playoff chase? All right. And you got a point finally under a coach on the road against the Revolution? Or is this the team that absolutely crapped the bed against not only one of the worst teams in Liga MX, but a team even worse than you in the West in the standings in St. Louis? And I just don't have a real grasp as to what this team is, and that's
it's
why
both.
Okay.
It's both because the first year Nico Estevez was here, 2022, that team was remarkably healthy for the whole season. And they finished 3rd in the West with 1.56 points per game, right? And this year, and last year too, all banged up, they were not anywhere close to that, right? Right now they're at 1.2 points per game. So that's like, yes, if you're 100% healthy and this team is all firing on peak form, then this team is capable of not the very top echelons. You're not going to be LAFC. You're not going to be RSL this season, right? But you're going to be very competitive. You're not going to be LA Galaxy this season. You're going to be in that very competitive next group of 2 or 3 clubs right under their very best. If you're 100% healthy and if everyone's in form. So if you get Velasco back, if you get Jesus Ferreira back, if you get Delgado back, if you get Frazier back, and Show turns out to be decent, if you get all those bodies back and you get all those bodies performing at the top level, then yes, this team is capable of being a playoff team. But they don't have that, and they're not likely to get that because those guys, it is really hard to go from hurt to superstar overnight. Velasco's not going to come off of an ACL and be MVP. Jesus Ferreira is not going to have a poor season that he's having, been missing for a month and a half, and walk in and score a goal a game for 9 games. Or if he does, they're going to be in the playoffs, right? If all 5 of those guys come in and kill it, they'll make it. But the odds of that happening, so yes, it's that team, but it's also like 80% no way that's that team.
They're probably at least as bad as the odds at the beginning of the season when you looked at this roster. And what are the odds that all these players will stay healthy and be available over the course of the season?
Yeah, I mean, if you sat down on paper and compared them to Colorado through Kansas City, Vancouver, Houston, Seattle, Portland, Minnesota, Austin, if you looked at those teams all healthy, they probably all are. It's a league of parity, right? Those teams are all probably relatively the same on paper. FC Dallas could probably be near the top of that stack if they had been healthy, but again, they're not. And the chances that they're going to get all that healthy and just crush it are just so.
Well, I guess that what the question is what is in the planning stages for them to correct whatever their training, their inability to keep players healthy is, and B, trying to reconsider the types of players they sign that may be less likely to be injured, whether that's because of some previous injury history or their age.
Yeah, stop signing old guys and guys that get hurt all the time. That's easy. The program I can't answer because I'm not in the medical field, but there needs to be an absolutely top to bottom 100% investigation into their medical staff
and training staff.
Training staff. I include all that under the same umbrella. You can even include like the doctors they use, the surgeons they use, the people they use for diagnosis, the physical fitness, strength and conditioning, training regimens. Like you got to look at the whole thing because this is now 2 straight seasons where the team's completely melted down because of the amount of injuries they have. And it's all similar types of players that are being overworked. There's a trend here that they should be able to work out and solve. And they may not have enough money to beat that problem. I don't know, but there have been teams here that have not had this problem. I don't remember, Oscar teams for a bit had a problem with young players having, these torso things, but they put in a program to solve it. Colin Clark's teams, I don't remember them having these kinds of injuries. They had like Mulrooney got an ACL, but that's not the same as like all these cavalcade of injuries they're having, all these midfielders that are burning each
mostly
other out,
muscular injuries, really.
Yeah, I mean, other than Giovanni and Allen, but you knew that coming in. Those guys haven't been injury prone other than their ACLs. That's not the same thing. That's not these wear and tear injuries that they're having all the time. So, I still be looking back at Colin Clark's teams and how they were fitter than everybody else in the league, and they outworked everybody else in the heat all the time. And whereas there's a million strategies you can use, and I honestly haven't felt like Dallas was fitter than everybody else since probably the Shellis era and maybe partway through the Oscar era. Like sometimes Oscar's teams were really fit and other times they were really old. In 2017, for example, they got really old and crapped out and were terrible that he got rid of those guys. So,
Well, the other side of the coin in terms of the transfer window is it does appear that the Martin Paz move to Italy has fallen off by the wayside, and maybe he is going to stick around for a while, which would all be a good thing. And which leads me to ask about how much you enjoyed seeing him at the Ranger game, FC Dallas night at the Ranger game earlier this week.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, that little Ranger FC Dallas jersey is pretty sweet, man. I don't know if you've seen one. Those are nice.
No, I have not.
No, the numbers on the back are like embroidered. I mean, it's not like an iron-on crap. It's a nice kit. They both went out and threw the ball. Martin Paz and Petter Musa both went out there and threw the first pitch together. Did
they both hold the ball at the same time and throw it together?
Yeah,
like
they both threw at the same time,
like Siamese twins or something.
Well, not like Siamese twins. No, they each had a ball. Here's the two FC Dallas All-Stars, and half the people there were like, "What?
Who?
FC what?" Somebody told me that they said FC Dallas. He says, what's the F stand for? Oh, football club. And they were like, "What is that? Like a Cowboys thing?" Yes. There's a massive part of the audience that has no idea what FC Dallas is even today.
It's good to know that same question is being asked all these years later as it was originally back in 2003 or whatever it was when they debuted the FC thing. Yes.
Oh, I never get over parents yelling "Go FC" on sidelines of the
that kills me.
It's just the worst.
Frisco County. That was always my favorite, is that it stood for Frisco County.
Yeah, go FC. Okay.
Well, that's cool.
It was good. That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Speaking of that, I did enjoy the mention that it was the anniversary, the 20th anniversary, was it 20th or 18th? I can't. What anniversary is it of Toyota Stadium / Pizza Hut Park? They did something.
I think was it 20th?
2005, right? So it should be 19.
Yeah, no, it's not 20th. We're like 18 or 19 years into it. Anyway, it's the anniversary of the stadium.
Whatever.
And it's insane to me that that this thing has been around for so long that there are people that don't even remember what Pizza Hut Park originally looked like in the surroundings being so vacant back then versus what it is today as Toyota Stadium after its initial, refurbish with the South End and the Hall of Fame. And it harkened back to me remembering on that opening day back in whatever year it was when they opened that stadium, and it was so far away from being done. Dan, you weren't living here yet, were you?
Not by a long shot. I was 2 years out of high school.
Okay, yeah. So when Pizza Hut Park opened that year, I was still living in Florida at the time, and I flew in for the game, and I was shocked how unprepared that facility was for an event. Concession stands weren't finished. There's something about the parking lot wasn't finished or something too.
Oh yeah, they were just like
they were like dirt fields.
Everywhere.
Yes,
it was so bad.
And the whole thing just was really. But the flip side of that is that all of us that had been waiting for so long, and we were so worried that the club was going to, get dumped by the league, and after the McKinney deal had fallen through, and especially after the South Lake debacle, we were all so excited and so genuinely full of joy and proud of Pizza Hut Stadium, Pizza Hut Park when it opened. It was one of the best days ever back then, even though it was really in a bad state on opening day. We were all really, really excited, and that's what came flooding back in my memories when I saw.
Remember who scored that day?
No, I don't.
Fish had a brace. Ruiz had 2.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yeah. And they won that game too, didn't they?
No, it was 2 to draw.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It was bonus points, by the way, for the last goal scorer at Cotton Bowl.
Are you asking me who it was?
Yeah.
Last goal scorer at the
Cotton Bowl.
It was Buzz. He snuck on the field after the game.
It's Chris Bondi.
Oh, wow. Boy, that's a name I haven't heard in a million years. Chris Bondi scored. Yeah, so...
Coach at UConn, by the way.
Yeah. Do you remember? Yeah, I remember when the stadium opened, Buzz. It was a crazy
day. It's beautiful. I'll tell you a funny, in the early days of social media kind of story. Because it was Pizza Hut Park, I took a photo that I had of the stage, which is the red metal thing, and I photoshopped the Pizza Hut red roof from one of their restaurants, and I photoshopped it onto the top of that red awning, the red metal gang thing they have for the concerts.
Right.
And that photo made the rounds, and people posted it on the internet as, here's the new Pizza Hut Park for FC Dallas with my photoshopped Pizza Hut roof on it. And I had to email people and say, no, that's a fake photo. And I know because I made it. So I'm you need to take that down. That's not correct.
I forgot.
It doesn't have a Pizza Hut roof on it,
The original, because the north end where they put the temporary seating and all of that was crazy days.
I actually have a photo of the field with a sign, coming soon, Dallas Burns Stadium, back before they even broke ground. It was just an empty field with a sign in it. I should put that as the front of this podcast.
Yeah, well, it was funny because the photo that the club posted was an aerial shot of the stadium with the fans on opening day. And because it's an aerial shot, you can see how everything around it is just essentially cattle fields and the tollway. There's no buildings around it. It's just like this giant, massive structure in the middle of nothing. And the number of people on your Discord, they were like, oh my God, what is that? Like they didn't even know. Either they didn't remember that it was in that state when they built it, or B, just never knew that's what it looked like on opening day way back in the early aughts.
It's funny how prophetic the city was, and really the county and the school districts, and they knew that area would not stay like that. Because when we first went up there, Frisco was basically like the area down just north of like where IKEA is, like where the Rough Riders are, and then like nothing. Like the tollway was just barren from there up. The main downtown sort of Frisco, the main street that is still there, of course, is to east of where the stadium is. You couldn't see that stuff from the tollway. So like the first time I remember this distinctly, like the first time I ever went up there, you went past like the last thing on the tollway and you're like, where in the world are we going? Like, cause you were up into the cattle fields of nothingness for like 10 minutes before you came to where the stadium was going to be. And now it's surrounded by everything. It's crazy.
It is great. It is tremendously different. I mean, everything about that entire area is exactly what they all thought it was going to turn out to be. I mean, so much has grown up since then, and there's more coming. That kids park and the PGA stuff, and
one of the things I most remember about the early stadium was that they didn't paint the walls. Like the walls were just cement.
Right. Yeah, they were.
It
just
wasn't for a couple years
color.
They painted it.
Yeah, that's right.
I liked it better when it was cement.
Yeah.
It should have been Adobe like the upper part was.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I mean, how have we not yet heard any news about this stadium renovation that, all of our sources were telling us was going to begin this winter, and we still have heard nothing. So I'm starting to get nervous about that whole thing. Politics is politics. Right?
Well, the longer that gets drawn out, the more it makes me wonder if there's something else coming that portends maybe, and I'm just going to make something up. I'm totally making this up. Another stadium somewhere else. Like I know that's ridiculous. I'm just saying that the longer they drag this out, it just opens the door for the question is maybe something else is happening we're not aware of.
I mean, I don't remotely speak for the Hunts by any means, but I don't think it's the Hunts that have cold feet about building and renovating in Frisco. Right. I don't think they're the ones that are balking. If something is happening here that's making this thing fall apart, I don't think it's because of the Hunts. I think it's going to be because of something else. So like the only way that I think, and this is just my opinion, the only way your scenario happens is if basically Frisco and the school district and the county have decided that they don't really want to throw more money at this thing. They don't really care about SC Dallas so much anymore, they got so much other things.
Or somebody or something has happened financially to make everybody to money whip everybody into making a move. Like another city came in and said, we're going to do this and we're going to give you all this money to pay off Frisco and Collin County to leave.
I just don't see that.
No, I agree. I don't either. But again, it's just one of a very few number of explanations as to why we've been hearing this noise about a massive reconstruction of the facility now for what feels like the last, 8 months?
Yeah, well, the last time I tried to ask somebody, they kind of mumbled, there's a lot of players here in terms of, and here being Frisco.
Yeah.
It's not just the Hunts. So like, I'm sure, but still like, clock's ticking on what we thought was going to be a winter groundbreaking. We already actually thought it was going to be mid-season, and then it got moved back and that to the winter groundbreaking. And now we're like, okay.
Well, and here's the other thought. Now that I think about it, if they already know that it's never going to be done anywhere near the World Cup, what's the point in rushing it?
Fair.
So maybe that's what this is about. Maybe
fair.
That's what it's about. Other things I wanted to talk about on my list of stuff. Everybody throw out a real quick bedtime prayer for Ava Hunt, one of Clark's daughters. She apparently was injured on a hike and required surgery of some point. She was posting everybody thanks for well wishes on the socials, and People Magazine even wrote an article about it. That's how I saw it, because I love to read my People Magazine. And,
you were talking about that earlier. Yeah.
And so we don't know what the injury is. It says like a deep wound. So I'm assuming she was hiking somewhere and fell down and jabbed a stick in her leg, maybe near her femoral artery, and almost bled out to death or something. I don't know.
Let's not get carried away.
Well, if you're not going to tell me what happened, I'm going to speculate.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Let's see. Unless Dan has a speculation as to what the injury is, he'd like to share with the group.
No, but let's not get Buzz sued.
Yeah, please don't. Yeah.
All right.
So I don't have any money anyway. Fair enough.
Fair enough. All right. So I think we've hit all the high notes of everything I wanted to talk about. Anything you want to talk about, Buzz, we haven't gotten to yet?
Yeah, somebody else brought this up, and I can't remember who deserved credit for this. It probably was like 18 people, and I was just late to the party. But how cool was it that the U20 team and the Olympic team were both captained by FC Dallas products? I thought that was awesome. Tanner Tessmann and Nolan Norris. Shout out to El Capitans. Love it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Tanner was the best player in the tournament for the United States. I was very proud of Nolan, but I'm also a little upset with him because he singularly could have ended that game before they gave up the tying goal. He should have done something better with a late clearance of the ball. But
well, maybe it's an opportunity to grow.
That's a lesson learned. But to your general point, yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, and Tanner going to Fiorentina, I guess I was reading. Not that I know squat.
I think Fiorentina's one, and what was the other one that was looking at him too? I can't remember off the top of my head. We'll see.
Well, I thought I saw a thing about that they were leaning towards Fiorentina, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm not reporting anything there. I just think it's so cool
as the podcast Fiorentina fan, I would love for that to happen. Oh, I would love for him to end up.
So the Inter was my team. I was all ready for that. So
okay. I don't think I have anything else. Dan, you got anything? You've been awfully quiet today, sir.
No, I've just really enjoyed like a week or two off soccer. It's been great.
I know you're upset about Luton and the kit situation.
A little bit. Still a bit sore.
Yeah, I like that kit. Why don't you like the kit?
Because
the home kit that they're returning.
It's just not the best execution of what they were trying to do. I mean, I like it more than a lot of Luton fans, oddly. But it's... So the situation is, and this is something that this will make everyone feel better about FC Dallas. So Luton Town, their contract with Umbro ended at the end of the 23-24 season. They were supposedly in talks with Kappa about moving to them. Supposedly those talks broke down, and at the last minute, they kind of came crawling back to Umbro. Now, my impression is Umbro said, well, we don't have time to design you anything. So here's your existing kit. We'll make you some more. And we're going to recolor one of your old ones. And then maybe for your third shirt, we'll do something. I think that the thing that bothered me more is the, and this is relatable to FC Dallas, it is the spin of it. To come out a week before the season and say, hey, this kit that we've not been able to sell in months and months and months, we're going to now roll it over for your benefit. Well, no, if it was for fans' benefit, it wouldn't still be listed as 23-24 on the team store, and it still wouldn't be unavailable to buy for several months on end. It would have been start of the summer before the kids go on their summer holidays, and for people who know British people, we love wearing soccer jerseys just to say, hey, we're from here, fuck off. Yeah. It's just a bungled spin attempt. And I think with Luton, there is definitely a notion of a League Two operation off the field that's just carried over in that.
I'm sorry, Dan. I know both those things, the club and their kits, are important to you.
It really is.
But did you guys take note of what the ladies were wearing against Germany the other day? As best as I can tell, Buzz and Dan, that kit combination for the United States women was a historic moment in U.S. kit combinations.
I know.
Do you recall a senior U.S. team ever wearing white shirts, red shorts, and white socks?
No, as you quite rightly did the research and pointed out, that we don't think that's ever happened before. That's amazing.
I can't find any evidence of it ever happening. And I think the reason why is, if we're all being honest, it looks a little too Canadian.
It does a little.
Yeah, it's a little too Canadian, a little too close to Canada. But I did think it was kind of cool to see red shorts with the white and white like that the other day. I thought that was an interesting look for sure.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Kit history. Yeah, it's not the fact that they were wearing red shorts. They've done red shorts before. It's with the fact that it was with a white shirt and white socks.
Right.
That's the
combination.
It's the combination that was. I think that's the first time we've ever seen the United States do that. At least since the advent of the women's team in the early 90s. This is the best I can tell.
Right.
All right. I don't have anything else to talk about.
I got two things to say. Yeah. First, shout out North Texas, first place again. They got a win against St. Louis and a tie against Austin, so they're back in first place, second overall in the power rankings. So that's a good team. You guys should go watch them play. I say that all the time, but it's true. And also, there's been some reports that Boca Juniors again is trying to buy Alan Velasco, and that FC Dallas won $7 million, which is how I know it's not true, because there's no way they're selling him for $7 million. It's got to be more than $7 million if they're selling him, because that's less than what they paid for him. So that's not. But
or maybe they've seen him train of late, and maybe they'll just take whatever they can get for him.
Maybe they're panicking and thinking to get him whatever they can.
And just real quick, I just thought about this. I hate to end podcasts on sad notes, but I do think at least
lies.
Oh, I did want to mention the sad note that we heard last week, that the Buzz Carrick of the Dallas Sidekicks, for all intents and purposes, Alan Balthrop, is a great guy. He's a historian of the club. He has been, if there's anybody that knows something about the Dallas Sidekicks, it's Alan. Sad story. His young teenage son, I think he was a teenager, he may have been only 11, had cancer and passed away last week. And so our condolences and thoughts and love to Alan and his family, and everybody have a real quick thought for him and his family, please, because he's a soccer nut just like the rest of us, and we all are very brokenhearted for him. So
well said. Local legend.
He is a local. He's been doing that way longer than you've been doing this, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So that was really heartbreaking news. So there you go. All right, boys, I have nothing else. Are we going to continue to do podcasts up until the return of the team on the 24th against DC United?
Yes.
All right. We shall deliver, whether there's content to be delivered or not.
If nothing else, we can talk about how bad everything is.
We're pretty good at that.
When does the window close?
1 week, the 14th. You got a week.
We are good at that, Dan, aren't we?
So, next podcast we can talk about how the window closed and what happened or not. So,
all right. Before we go, let's make bets. Let's put let's put it on the line. By the time we do the next podcast, will Dallas have signed any other players? Dan?
No.
Buzz?
Yeah, I'm also no. Yeah, show's going to be it.
I'm going to say yes.
Oh.
And it is going to be a center back, but it's going to be equally and as spectacularly as disappointing as the kid they signed out of the Israeli league.
I like Turner Humphrey. What are you talking about? It's a North Texas player.
I know. It's going to be something like that. It's going to be somebody that doesn't need a senior roster.
Wait, does that count?
Yeah.
Come on. I think that's bending the rules a little bit.
Oh, would it be if they sign somebody out of North Texas?
Well, I'll how about this caveat? If it's an emergency signing, no. But if they do a full blown, here's the first team contract, then we'll say that's a yes.
That's fair.
Okay. We're all right.
But I'm still going to say no.
How am I the optimist out of the group?
Yes. Dark days, my friend. Dark days.
I feel like when you say they will sign someone, but he will suck, that's not optimism.
So am I actually the less optimist? Am I the pessimist out of the group?
I think you kicked Tex Hooper in the balls and then spat in his eye.
Awesome. I love it. All right. Well, it was good talking to you guys again. Buzz, I'm glad you made it. How many miles did you put on your truck in this trip, my friend?
Oh, gosh. Was it...
you posted it somewhere.
I did. And
was it 6,700 miles?
Yeah. 6,041 miles.
Oh, just over 6,000 miles.
Yep. 6,000.
I don't think I've put 6,000 miles on my car this year.
That's just slightly more than above average for me. Sometimes my longest one's 9,000.
And you've had that truck not even 3 years yet, correct?
It's 3 years old in July, so it's got 70,000 miles on it after
Good
3 years.
Lord.
Right. Well, remember that I drive for work.
Yes,
sometimes. I've spent years commuting to.
I know you were doing that regular weekly mysterious drive to somewhere in a long distance away that you never want to tell us where you were going.
That was in the truck.
Area 51.
college sports and all other things, and then I do these long trips. I mean, I drive like nobody else that I know of drives like I do on these trips. I mean, I know people that'll do this once, but they don't do it for 12 years like I've done. And even before I started going to Northern Idaho, I used to do this all the time. I'd go on these long drives to other places. I mean, this year, like I drove to Orlando to spend a day with my wife in Orlando,
You love to drive.
Is this what I do? Yeah, I do love to drive, and I don't shy away from it. I enjoy the driving. I enjoy thinking and being away and getting my mind on stuff and centering myself, and things like that. And I'm a big explorer. I have an explorer vibe in my DNA, if you will, and I like to go places and see things, particularly things I've never seen. So
you're such an influencer.
I mean, if you want to dedicate a lot of time to listening to true crime podcasts, there's nothing wrong with just doing that at home.
I actually don't listen to true crime. I listen to music, because if I listen to an audio book or a podcast, then my mind at some point will wander, and I'll be like 10 minutes later, I'll be like, okay, what did I miss? What are they talking about? How do I go back?
And that's why I can't listen to podcasts very often. It has to be driving, not working. Otherwise, work does not happen.
Interesting.
Yeah, even driving, I can't do that.
Interesting. Well, the point being is, I'm glad you made it home safely.
Thanks. Me too.
Is your dog a good car dog? Did you find that out?
He is. Yeah, he's pretty good.
Okay.
He's pretty good. Yeah. He's a little interested in the cars going past and wants to bite them, but other than that, he travels really well.
That's a problem on the highway, Buzz.
Yeah, it is. Well, he learned not to do it, but he's still interested in them. And I'll tell a real quick story. I thought I destroyed my truck. My wife was working in Rockford, and so I drove up towards Rockford to pick her up. In the morning, after I picked her up, I filled up with gas. And half a mile down the road, my car just cocks out completely. It's like my truck, totally dead. The electrics will fire and the car will turn over, but it won't fire. It won't catch. Oh my God, this is a mess. I'm 1,500 miles from home. I got to get roadside assistance. How long can I even get somebody before I can look at? Because I'm not like in a major city at that point. So I'm like, Earl at the car shack has got to look at this thing. It might take weeks. Thankfully, I found a guy who was super kind and super nice, and he hauled my truck in and my trailer, which is above and beyond the call of duty. And he started taking the thing apart, and we found that there was 4 gallons of water in my tank of gas that I filled up. So out of 15 gallons, 4 gallons of it was water.
It was water from the gas station?
Yeah, I filled up from the gas station, and I got 11 gallons of gas and 4 gallons of water out of the thing. And the reason what happens is like as you drive, it's all mixed up. And as you drive down the road, the water settles out, and then all you're getting is water, which won't, of course, combust. So I thought I was screwed 1,000 miles from home with this dog and a trailer and a truck that won't run, and it's like, this guy really helped me out up near Rockford. And he drained out he found the problem, drained out all the gas. It took about 4 hours to get it all sorted out, but he got it all sorted out. So I'm going to send the gas station the bill for it. But you can imagine my panic in the moment. It was like 95 degrees on the side of the highway, stuck with a truck that won't run. It was awful. That was a bad day.
The lesson is don't go on long road trips. Just get on a plane.
That's no fun.
So out of interest, was that the most expensive bottle of water you've ever bought?
Yes. Yeah. $1,000 bottle of water, basically. Well, 4 gallons of water. So, but yeah, still.
On a totally unrelated note, you should subscribe to Patreon.
Yes. Speaking of $4,000.
Yeah. Buzz needs more Patreon subscribers.
I really do, actually.
All right. Very good. Well, the club's not trying to help you out on that, Buzz. The interest in the club and the performances isn't helping the Patreon effort, is it?
Yeah, no. I mean, sometimes you get weird reactions. Like one of the most listened to episodes we ever did was when Lucci got fired. Like when we explained why he got fired, and basically that was like our most listened to episode ever.
So when they fired Nico, they could have just gone back and listened to the Lucci episode, is what you're. Yeah.
They could have, because it was very similar.
I haven't checked the secrets.
I haven't checked the numbers on the Nico fire episode, but it might be pretty high too. So.
Very good.
Although I do think, not to get into another topic, but I do think that like the Lucci firing caught us more off guard than the Nico one. We kind of all felt the Nico one was coming. At least I did.
No,
it
we
felt
all
like it
knew
was
the
coming,
Nico
but
one, and I thought we all know the Lucci
Yeah.
one was coming too. It just happened way too late.
Maybe that's what it was. It was getting so late in the season. People were like, "Oh my god!" I don't remember. I just remember being a little bit more caught off guard by the Lucci one.
Yeah,
I
because
think.
remember we all thought Lucci was going to get fired, and then they went on a good run, and they were like, "Oh, now we can't
Yeah.
fire him." And then they shit the
Right.
bed towards the end of the season, and then they fired him.
Right. I think that we probably figured at that point that he would finish
Yeah,
the season,
maybe.
but then
That's what it was.
they didn't. I think I was on vacation for that one too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You went on vacation, and the big signing didn't happen, or the big ruckus didn't happen. So
Show.
oh
That's
my
it.
God.
That's the big signing.
It would be the most Dallas thing ever if they sign a guy named Show and he never shows up because they can't get
When that dude is MLS Best 11 next year, you come back and remember
right,
this.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll put my life savings on that never happening.
Oh,
All right. Very good. Dan, good to talk to you again.
Likewise, and happy English football season eve to
Yeah,
you.
we have our our prediction episode of the Kick Around coming up this weekend.
And plenty of loot in town. 5 of the first 6 games are on Paramount Plus.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. And Buzz, it's great to have you back, as I said, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm glad you guys are here. And I sure hope you pick Newcastle to get relegated again, because every time you do, they have a great season.
We haven't picked Newcastle to get relegated in years.
Oh, has it been years? I bet it hasn't been years.
It was absolutely prior to them getting bought by a nation state. Yes. However many years ago it was
I know.
the country of Saudi Arabia acquired.
I don't want to talk about that.
Okay.
I'm going to pretend like that didn't happen.
All right.
Amanda Shelby still owns the team as far as I'm concerned.
Now, she's not even part of the club anymore. You
La,
know,
la,
she's
la,
out.
La, 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 I'm not listening. La,
Okay.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm. For wills, trusts, probate, and business law, call 469-515-2559. That's 469-515-2559. Or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
And thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. We will speak to you next week on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
Think happy thoughts.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.